Okay, hello, I'm Chris O'Connors. A warm welcome to podcast 5 from the North Wales Business Academy. If you haven't heard about the Academy before, it's a project that's been running since 2017, helping businesses across North West Wales in a variety of ways, mainly through our Strategic Business Analysis programme. So, a warm welcome. Today, we're looking at this phrase, the new normal. What is the new normal? What do we think it is going forward? As ever, joining me today are my fellow business mentors in the Academy, Larry Jones, welcome Larry, Mike Scott, welcome Mike, and Chris Walker, welcome Chris. So,
Hi.
The new normal, if I can start guys just going around the virtual screen, the new normal, what does it mean for you? Chris, if I could start with yourself first.
Yeah, so the new normal actually I've been enjoying. However, there is a caveat to that, of course. So apart from the loss of lives and people with real serious health problems now, loss of livelihoods and the devastating effect it has and is having on business, there are sort of sunny parts to the clouds here, and I'll identify them very quickly, is that I'm an unashamed climate crisis worrier, and as is said from statistics, actually the climate crisis is being caused 70% by corporations and things like military machines. So I would say this, wouldn't I? But the idea that we've cut down travel for meetings, using IT much more regularly and usefully, the fact that it seems to be encouraging renewable energy initiatives, and what I'll call new normal seems to be telling us how we need to live our lives from here on. And so for me, there are things to celebrate that are making us do things that we're very reluctant to change otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. So we've been forced to look at some of what was the old normal. So Mike, if I could come to you next with that, what's some of the new normal for you?
Yeah, I think some of the new normal for me is the obvious changes in the working environment. I was reading an article this week that was actually titled, "Are We Now Sleeping at the Office?" What that was actually getting at is that, you know, that now it's possibly going to be the new normal that more people will be working from home. And of course, that has its own difficulties in terms of certainly creating work-life balance, separating work from home life and parenting, etc. And I also think, you know, the sort of the rhythms of the office are difficult to replace or difficult to replicate when you're working from home. So there's going to be all sorts of changes, I think, but I think that level of flexibility is going to become the new normal. And we will spend a little bit more time working away from the office environment than perhaps we used to do. I've even got one case of a client company of mine, big offices in Chester, who are now looking to close those offices completely and get people working from home and just hot desk it into a small office. But it reckons it will actually reduce their overhead in terms of, you know, the cost of facilities down by 90%.
Wow.
So that's an interesting factor in this development. Yeah, so I think that working environment is going to be a new normal, completely different from the normal we had before.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you, Mike. And then, Larry, if I can come to yourself, what's your new normal?
I think the new normal is focusing very much on keeping everybody safe, you know, going forward. Definitely more use of technology. We've all been doing it for the last 3 months. And the community, I think, is very important, you know, because we've relied very heavily on our community recently. And deciding in business what is essential and what is not so essential.
Yeah.
And maybe apply that to our lives as well.
And that's a good point, because in effect, our work communities have become virtual. So we've had social distancing, but we've had virtual closeness. But on the flip side, we've all probably, you know, got a lot closer to our communities, whether it be things when we're all clapping for the NHS on a Thursday evening, or helping folks out who are shielding or whatever. So, and that's brought us closer with our communities as well. So we've got some of these things. So, you know, are we sleeping in the office? Yeah, for those of us remote working, we are. So we've got a new way of working. You know, we've talked before in previous podcasts that we've got some businesses that are thriving with what's happened, some that are surviving, and some that aren't going to survive, unfortunately. So, and we've got obviously people working in all those organisations. So when we then look at how we now manage what is now more and more of a remote workforce, what are some of the challenges there going forward, do you think? Chris, if I could come back to you first on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think as a management lecturer and a consultant, my sense is that the new normal is going to actually require sort of new leadership and new management habits and processes, etc., and indeed being managed as well. So what it seems to me is that we've had cultures where we're looking at how do we monitor and control our staff and ensure that from a kind of leadership management point of view, we're actually maximizing performance through KPIs and all sorts of things. My prediction here is that this is going to change because at our staff level, there seems to be two issues that the new normal presents. If we're majorly working from home, there seems to me, from my experience, to be two basic types of people. One type that are very self-initiating, can actually manage their own time very well and like the flexibility that this remote working will give, and they get their work done. However, there's an equal and opposite kind of group of people that don't like working on their own, that need the company, the camaraderie, the noise of the office, and almost the knowledge that somebody's actually checking on what they're doing in order to keep their noses to the grindstone, shall I say. So I feel that there's a whole area around performance management that will be ideal territory for any management and leadership writers out there looking for a new book to write.
Okay, there's a good cue, an opportunity. So, Larry, if I could come to you next, building on what Chris was saying there. So, we're, you know, talking about two sorts of workers, then, you know, then as a manager or leader, your leadership style, then you're probably having to look to change.
Absolutely. I think, you know, we need to look closely at virtual leadership, understand how it works. It's been around for a number of years, but, you know, applying the different leadership depending on what we're looking for. But I think three things that comes really there from Chris is motivation level. We need to understand how our people have been motivated in relation that, you know, some people are motivated because they're working in teams and they see their teams all the time. We also need to be clear, I think, on our expectations. What do we expect out of them? And possibly spend more time in setting smart objectives with the individuals rather than doing it for them. And then obviously deciding, you know, what is the outputs that we're looking for. So we may need to look at different, you know, empowering our team members much more, giving them, you know, more space, but we still need to come back to the, you know, what outputs we're looking for really. So being clear about that,
Yeah. And again, it's quite interesting because, you know, when we look at businesses and the different ways they are, we've also got differing home circumstances for folks. So now that they're not in their workplace, but they're in their home place, you know, their circumstances have changed quite a bit. So, Mike, leadership styles in the age of coronavirus.
Yeah, well, I mean, what it got me thinking about was certainly when Chris was speaking, rather than sort of leadership styles, is management of the other stakeholders as well in a business. I think is going to change significantly. So, I mean, you know, I've done a lot of work in the past in sort of supply chains, and part of the role that I had was, you know, looking at just-in-time suppliers. and I think we're likely to move to just in case suppliers, which is asking our supply chain to be a little bit more resilient and a bit more flexible than it's been in the past. Certainly companies that I've been dealing with regularly can continue to do business. They're really struggling with the supply chain and not being able to fulfill orders because of that. And I think it's something they've not looked at before. And I think, managing all the stakeholders in the business in a different way now is going to be really significantly important. We talked about customers before, but suppliers and, the other stakeholders in the business requires a style of management that we perhaps haven't adopted to this point.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Mike. So just to wrap up then, guys, I'm going to ask the question, we'll go around the virtual room. The new normal, better than the old normal, in your opinion? So, Chris, I'll start with you.
Okay. I'm sort of a bit of a realist and a pragmatist. There ain't no old normal anymore, so I've already Gomoed. I've got over it and I've already moved on. So my example here is, you see me kind of doing a lot of online podcasts and stuff. So I've consciously reinvented myself when my diary emptied horribly about 2-3 months ago, and I thought, how do I reinvent this? So this is the new normal, and I'm excited. It's creative, it's fun, as I say, apart from the kind of the really desperate bits. But innovation can go bonkers now. Open house.
And that's true. For those, if this is your first podcast, one of our previous podcasts did look at innovation. Podcast number 1, actually. So, Larry, over to you then. The new normal, better than what was the old normal?
I think we can learn a lot from challenges, and I think it has given us a lot of opportunities, and there's excellent examples across North Wales. In Dyffryn Ogwen, as soon as this happened, the lockdown, they developed a website to sell local produce and deliver them with an electric car around the area, with power created from the water in Dyffryn Ogwen. So I think it's very innovative. I think, challenges always gives, and in this case, it's given lots of excellent opportunities.
Yeah, and I like that there's a sustainability all through the core of that, which, is part of our new normal as well. And then finally, Mike, to yourself.
Yeah, very optimistic, I would say, is my view. I think it's certainly the situation that we've been in has been difficult for all the reasons that Chris has articulated, but I think it's raised awareness of things like sustainability, of the use of technology, and becoming more flexible in our work patterns. It's been talked about a lot, and I know a lot of companies have progressed it, but I don't think to the degree we can now. I think all of us have seen the benefit of even things the way that we're communicating at the moment, and the opportunities that gives us that we perhaps haven't maximised before. So I'm really optimistic we can do business in a better way.
Good. So that's the end of our podcast, guys. Dirk Varianpoud, thank you very much, everyone, for those of you watching and listening. If you're watching this on our LinkedIn group, feel free to add a comment. And if you're not, feel free to follow us or on all the social media, from Facebook to Twitter and Instagram. Not yet on TikTok, though. That's popular now. So thank you very much, guys. Next week, we'll be looking at sales and marketing in the age of coronavirus. How is it different? Or how do we do it, or should we do it? So thank you again, and again, thank you to my fellow mentors for joining us in today's conversation. So for now, guys, goodbye.
Cool.